Welcome to TradeTheMBI.com. This is John. This reports for the 11th. And well, look at that nice bar. What did we do? Did we fill in this positive extreme? Let's go take a look. Right here. Boom. There it is. Just like that. Isn't that beautiful how that works out? So, all these days of doing nothing, well, we were slightly rising in them, but we just came back and revisited that. Now, we did get a prominent start of the day began here as the short built pretty intensely. We'd start to see the Azure rising at this point, and we knew that we were coming to the end. Last time, and I pointed it out before, that we saw it starting to peak out over here, and we had a similar situation. Well, it rolled over pretty quickly on this one, and then started to turn around rather fast when the orange went immediately from the top side straight down. So that's what you'd want to look for any turnaround rally. At this particular point, though, you've got a reset of steel and short-term buyers, mid-term buyers. Across when the long-term buyers are fading, they're going to get overwhelmed, and that's usually why you get a continuation to the lower side, even if short-term buyers plying in. When you look at a situation like this one back over here, you'd already had the decay of the mid-term buyers, and they were already turning around along with short-term buyers, and so that was a quick plateau of the red, and then it created the turnaround, and that's why the signal came a little bit late on the refill, but I wouldn't necessarily call it late because you didn't know way to tell when you were fading at that point that people were going to be that interested in it. Same thing could happen here. We're actually in a little bit better consideration here when you look at the extreme. We haven't dipped below the red line, so it's not like we're in an oversold situation in that. It's just a healthy fear situation where people got panicked, and it didn't seem as much panic selling as much as there was just no bid. Nobody was interested in buying. They were looking for a cheaper price to get in, and now they've got it. So the question is, and how long did I spend talking about? In fact, I should put that back up here because we talked about this over and over on looking for a 50% retrace. I was more interested in this peak point right there, right around the 24.45 in this particular case from a daily. Even if you wanted to expand all the way back to here, which I think has less validity just given how far it is, you're approaching 38% support right on that side, but we're not looking at a chart there that suggests that that's the ultimate endpoint. And you can run the same thing for the NQ. This one's a little bit cleaner from going back, and it's just approximate. So we're literally right on it for the NQ. But again, you got to have the turnaround points to justify that it's going to hold up. Likely what happens in these cases is while that builds up, you get a few days of back and forth supporting along and dipping below, and they're trying to test to see supply. And so it's rarely ever like clean on those lines, which is why from an empirical standpoint, when you look back at it, it gets to be a little sketchy as to some of those Fibonacci's, but it's a line at which point then people start to gauge, okay, do I have buyers if I dip below this level, or are they just not there? And that's usually when you begin your cascade lower. So from the Euro standpoint, it started to move back up. It got very close to the level that I said it would take to turn around, to stabilize things and get a rally. We are in a DOC spread there with the short, but you had the short-term reset. See how that strength allowed it to base and pull back up. The fact that the DOC here stayed above zero is key for the euro. If it had dipped below, I would have expected the euro to drop significantly more. So held up there, safety, everyone runs to safety. So they took out cash and put it right in treasuries. Oil also suffering a little. Now this is an interesting one because even though you have these massive supplies, world tension, not really in a oil-based area, so not creating that usual kind of impact. However, a little bit tough to stance. We've been in a long run with this per se. Probably expect to see that soften up a bit. We can actually see that it began moving into that short thing setup with the DSC orange right here, and we started to fade in both midterm, long-term buyers, just because the concern is if there's any kind of activity that it's going to cause well, a reduction in all sorts of economic. I mean, South Korea is a huge supplier. I just don't think that North Korea all of a sudden is going to do something when they haven't done it before, but a lot of people in history have done stupid things, and it happens. Gold, though, is the safe haven, but we've been expecting this press for some time. Did get a bit overbought, so probably going to get a little bit of fill back into it, but complete reset here. There's just plenty of buyers coming into this long-term turning around, so mid-term, but the short-term a little bit overbought, and that's why it's reflected here in the stream as well. So it might be an opportunity for a little lower. So here's what the day looked like on a 5K, and I've added the Fibonacci setup into it because it was interesting when we were talking about why from this short setup here with the DOC spread, the move above 13 point, very powerful. You only had a reset of the steel, and it still took a few bars before it reacted, and then we got into that no man's zone where the orange stays in range. We ended up with a couple of opportunities where you thought a buy might be coming because we had these dips below the negative 24, which is usually a little bit of a bounce back setup. The problem was you had extreme moves of the short-term buyers were already full in and had no ability to really add to the scenario. We even get this one where we came back up to the 23% line, which is this magenta one along with the short algo, because that's the other point. We couldn't get it close above the long algo or even above 23% when we had a couple of these resets, which is always suspect in my view. It just is a nice confirmation to have that crossover take place. And oftentimes when you get into a nice precipitous decline too, the 23% will move actually below the long algo, or even the long algo will go below, depending on how the action is taking place, will impact it. And so then what we had is the little cascade lower, and then we ended up with this situation here where we started with the rising Azure line, which usually indicates a little bit lower. We had it like right over here, and we continued to cascade lower. And I had mentioned in the Skype chat that we expected to move to a 50% retrace. It's a little hard to follow, but if you follow this green line, we kept cascading lower at the 50% point until right about here, popped up above it, and at that same point, we got overbought on the extreme, and immediately upon dipping below the red, popped back above, and at the same point then you had the DOC spread where the cyan moves above red. It gets a little convoluted in there, but if we expand the chart from here, we get a little clearer. I wanted to have all the data from before so you could see it. So cyan moves above here, and then boom, green breaks down below, and so that takes place right there at the 50% point, and from there you can expect to return to lows. And on a trend day like this, that's typically what you look for, because you've got longs trapped at this particular point. You get a little short cover relief going into there, and then they just reapply back into it, and that's what sent it back down to the bottoms. And for the most of the day, we spent well below that negative 13.5 rose color line right here, which indicates that more distribution than not, and that's exactly what we got. And pretty much stayed flat. There just hasn't been any impetus for return buying, even with the dips here of the orange. We still had dropping shakeout yellow as well as being below blue and azure, which is rarely a good thing. And then every time it popped up even the fraction, got overbought. It's crazy. You're already down 30 some points and you still overbought. So this is what fear does. This was the only impetus behind this. Everything else had been pretty much in cruise control, though we had seen from the daily chart that we never got that dramatic buy we were looking for with our orange dipping below. We came close here and it just never went down below, and then we just kind of went sideways. But then we finally had that cyan where it was like, okay, there's a potential there, but it immediately turned into a DOC spread the next day, right before this. And once that happened, this was the warning shot right there, and then boom, it just cascaded lower. I wouldn't call this a dramatic move. All we did was backfill this positive stream. You'd have to drop another, 50, 60 points before we would consider this a significant move. So one soft day, just like back over here. Now, if we start to see the same similar return, then we know that we've got a little set pattern going on with these guys. And that's always worth noting too, particularly on a long setup. As always, though, trade well. We'll talk to you later.